Right.
So we've got here now, we're going to finish the edge. Again, it's another armhole, but you can see on my test run here that I've actually done it on an outward curve. So it can be used also for like maybe uh, like a feature collar, I suppose, or a like a flap on a skirt,
Or pocket.
or a pocket. Yeah, that's true. Um, yep. So there are, several different ways to use it, and it's literally just a double bind. So we're going to get this bind, we're going to fold it in half, stitch it onto the outside, flip it to the inside, understitch it, and then top stitch it from the top. So that's why this row of stitching you can see here, it's only on the underneath because that's understitching, and then this row here is the one that you see on top. And the nice thing about this too is that you can actually do the top stitching on top, so it'll be a nicer finish than having to do it on the underneath for it to be in the right place. Okay, so I've sewn the shoulder seam and left the underarm seam open, and sewing on the outside. And again, with this one, you can give it a little bit of a stretch around the curve of the underarm here. And I don't think you really need to have to bother to, like potentially I suppose you could press this before you started to sew it on, but I suppose it'll depend on your fabric and how unforgiving your fabric is. But that's why you have to do test runs to see how they're going to work. Now with this one here, I've stitched it on. Now I'm going to do the understitching. I don't really need to press that because the understitching will help you, will sort of work as like a pressing for you. Now we're understitching through all the layers, so the seam allowance, both seam allowances of the bias and the top edge of the bias as well. And don't stretch the armhole as you go in here. So I'm pushing the fabric, pushing the bind back onto itself. But yes, don't stretch the armhole, because if you're stretching the armhole at this stage, it'll stay stretched. So see how I'm keeping this straight. I'm not pulling it this way, I'm keeping it straight. I'm pushing up and just turning as I come to it. Okay, so you can see that's all sitting nice and flat now. Now we're going to tuck this under, and again, I mean you could potentially give this a press, but I don't think I'd really bother. I think I'd just let the top stitching act as your pressing as you go along. So I've got the inside foot against the finished edge, and just scooting this around. Okay, there's a little bit of pulling there, so I just need to give that a bit of a press. And we can trim the ends off here. Now it's going to match the finished edges of the underarm up. Okay, so I'm just going to overlock this and I'll come back to finish this in a minute. So this is the outside of the bind, and you can see I've overlocked this, so pressed the seam allowance towards the back, and now I've just left that little bit of overlocking there, so now I'm turning the overlocking inside here, flipping this here, and then we'll sew it on the outside, and just see where the edge finishes, and then we're just going to do a little tack along here just to hold that back. And again, as I keep saying, if it was in matching thread, you really wouldn't notice it that much, but it's just a much easier way of finishing the side seams, and so the armhole is flat when you're doing the work on it. And there are a couple of little loose threads here, but you can just trim those off as you go around to get rid of those, and that's your finished bound armhole.